Let's get right to our top story, those election results, and will they have implications in the 2020 presidential race? Leading the way, Kentucky's battle for governor. Overnight, the Democratic candidate declared victory over the Republican incumbent. Now, keep in mind, this is a state that the president carried by 30 points in 2016, but it was a deeply unpopular Republican governor. In Virginia, Democrats gained full control of that state house for the first time in 26 years, notwithstanding the controversies there. NBC's chief White House correspondent Hallie Jackson has the latest on an interesting night in politics. Hey, Hallie, good morning.
An interesting and late night, Savannah. Good morning to you. In Kentucky overnight, yes, you have Democrat Andy Beshear taking a victory lap, but the Republican governor, Matt Bevin, is refusing to concede. This is a race that's getting attention well beyond Kentucky. President Trump, remember, was just in the state this week telling voters there they cannot let the governor, and by extension him, lose. Now, the results may be a canary in the coal mine for the president's 2020 chances.
Thank you, Kentucky!
The top office in a deep red state turning blue overnight.
After tonight, this election is over. After tonight, we move forward with every other Kentucky citizen as Team Kentucky.
Democrat Andy Beshear declaring victory as Kentucky's next governor, a position once held by his father. But incumbent Matt Bevin isn't calling it quits just yet.
We are not conceding this race by any stretch. We want the process to be followed, and there is a process. We know for a fact that there have been more than a few irregularities.
Bevin, one of the country's least popular governors, ran as an ally of President Trump's, who won the state by 30 points. Both men framing the race as a referendum on the president and the impeachment inquiry. President Trump saying this at a Kentucky rally just hours before the polls opened.
And if you lose, they're going to say Trump suffered the greatest defeat in the history of the world. This was the greatest. You can't let that happen to me.
The Trump campaign saying overnight the president just about dragged Governor Matt Bevin across the finish line, adding a final outcome remains to be seen. Democrats also celebrating the results in Virginia overnight, where they took control of both houses of the state legislature for the first time in more than 2 decades. Earlier this year, the state's Democrats seemed in chaos after that blackface scandal involving Governor Ralph Northam and a racist yearbook photo. Today, a different story for the party.
I'm here to officially declare today, November the 5th, 2019, that Virginia is officially blue. Congratulations.
Republicans did manage to hold on to the governor's office in Mississippi, with Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves defeating Attorney General Jim Hood. President Trump and Vice President Pence sharing their support of Reeves, who'd been struggling in some polls.
They showed up and they worked hard, and I will never, ever forget their support.
Despite that victory, this morning, Kentucky emerging as a possible sign of trouble as the president and Republican Party look ahead to a fierce fight in 2020.
Hallie, it is a tight race, and the Kentucky governor, Matt Bevin, says he's not conceding. So what options does he have at this point?
So he has some options, Savannah. The governor could request that different counties recanvass the votes. That basically means check on the vote count to make sure that the totals are correct. But keep in mind, there's not an automatic trigger for a recount in that state. If the governor wants it, a judge would have to approve it. I imagine we'll find out more about Bevin's next steps later today.
All right, Hallie Jackson on a late night. Thank you very much.
Now to new details on that deadly ambush on an American family in Mexico that's led to shock and outrage on both sides of the border. As officials hunt for their killers, we are learning more about one of the young survivors and what he did to save the lives of his siblings. NBC national correspondent Miguel Almaguer has the very latest on this. Hey, Miguel, good morning.
Hoda, good morning. This is the hospital where the young victims were airlifted to. Hospital officials are being very guarded over their conditions, but a family relative tells NBC News that most of the children are out of surgery, I should say. This, as many of them, if all of them, have lost their mothers.
4 of my grandchildren are burnt and shot up.
A shocking crime scene south of the border, evidence of a cold-blooded assault on an innocent American family. 3 mothers and 6 children ruthlessly gunned down in the desert of northern Mexico, one of their vehicles torched with babies trapped inside.
Look at the bullet holes in Donna's
The attackers, believed to be part of a local cartel, still at large.
It's really hard to look at those charred skeletons and to see that, or to even think that that's my family in there.
Kendra Miller's brother lost his wife Ronita and their 4 children.
Ronita walked in a room and she's grinning ear to ear, and that's how she always was.
8 children survived the attack, including 13-year-old Devin Langford, who walked 14 miles to get help after hiding his younger siblings in the bushes.
They were beautiful and they were innocent, and they did not deserve this.
The group is part of a Mormon offshoot that settled in Mexico decades ago. The women were traveling in a 3-vehicle convoy, some headed to Arizona, others to visit relatives in Chihuahua when they were ambushed. The area has long been plagued by cartel violence, but the family says they never expected to be targeted.
They'll stop and surround our vehicles, but then they'll see who it is and that they recognize who we are because they keep an eye on every single person that comes in and out of the valley.
The ambush condemned by President Trump and Mexico's president. Trump tweeting, "This is the time for Mexico, with the help of the United States, to wage war on the drug cartels." So far, the FBI says Mexico has not requested any American assistance, but on both sides of the border, increasing pressure to strike back against those responsible for this massacre, which claimed the lives of 3 American women and 6 young children.
With the young victims recovering here in the hospital on the other side of the border, Mexican police say this morning they have taken 1 person into custody who may be connected to this shooting, but their investigation is still unfolding. Hoda?
All right, Miguel, thank you. And we will have more in our next half hour, including a look inside that community of American families and how they ended up in Mexico.
Craig joins us now. Big development in the impeachment investigation.
Savannah, Hoda, good morning. That is right. A stunning reversal here. A key diplomat has changed his testimony and admitted to a quid pro quo with Ukraine. NBC's Peter Alexander has details on this story. Peter, good morning to you.
Hey, Craig, good morning to you. You're right. This major reversal comes from a top diplomat, a Trump ally, and it does complicate the president's defense in the impeachment inquiry. Ambassador Gordan Sondland now backs up the testimony of several other witnesses who said there was a quid pro quo, that aid to Ukraine was being withheld until it announced investigations that could benefit the president's re-election campaign. This is significant because it is the first admission from a senior Trump official who spoke with the president about this very issue. This morning, changing his story, Gordan Sondland, a Trump donor turned diplomat, now says he remembers telling a senior advisor to Ukraine's president that the country would not get military assistance unless they committed to investigating the 2016 election and the Bidens. In other words, Sondland, who initially testified he was not aware of a quid pro quo over military aid, now describes what amounts to just that. The president has repeatedly said there was no quid pro quo.
When this came out, it was quid pro quo. Well, there was none. Quid pro quo doesn't matter because now they see in the call there was no quid pro quo.
Sondland, in a new statement to impeachment investigators, says his memory was, quote, refreshed after other key witnesses contradicted him. Democrats quickly reacting.
It's never too late to do the right thing. People want to keep coming forward, telling us the truth. We'll welcome it.
Sondland does not explicitly say that demand for Ukraine to announce investigations came from President Trump. In newly released transcripts from his deposition, Sondland describes a September phone call where he asked the president whether the White House was freezing military aid to get the investigations. Sondland says the president told him, "I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo. I want the president of Ukraine to do the right thing." Sondland told investigators, "I wouldn't say he hung up on me, but it was almost like he hung up on me." As for the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, Sondland says he pushed for the investigations, telling lawmakers Giuliani's demands kept getting more insidious as time went on. And when asked if Giuliani's effort was illegal, Sondland said, "I'm not a lawyer, but I assume so."
So, Peter, at the end of the day, even if the House does decide to impeach, this all would come down to the upper chamber, the Senate, where a trial would be held. Yeah. Any sense whether Republicans at this point are changing their minds at all with this new testimony?
Yeah, Craig, it's a good question. That's where all eyes will be focused. The Senate's top Republican, Mitch McConnell, though, said Tuesday if they were to hold an impeachment trial today, he is pretty sure the president would be acquitted, saying, quote, "I don't think there's any question it would not lead to a removal." Craig.
Peter Alexander from the White House this morning. Peter, thank you.
And we move now to the weather. Big blast of cold weather is going to hit a lot of the country starting today, and Alice got his eye on it. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Hope you got the gloves, scarves, everything ready to go, because we got some polar air coming out from the North Pole, and it is going to start out there and make its way south. In fact, as it dives south, we are going to see it spreading all the way from New England all the way down to Charlotte, Chicago. This is the core of that cold air reaching the eastern seaboard. For Thursday morning, we're looking at wind chills teens to 20s with air temperatures anywhere from 7 to into the mid-teens. Then on Thursday, you can see wind chills 20 to 30s in the highs. And then as we move into Friday morning's lows, again, bitterly cold with temperatures anywhere from 10 to 20 degrees below average, even into Friday afternoon as far as the highs are concerned. And we've got a storm system coming across the Great Lakes, rain and storm in the southern states. But behind it, we are looking for very cold air, and that's going to bring snow into the interior northeast. Basically, strong winds and a lot of wet weather for the I-95 corridor on Friday, which will make for a really rough afternoon commute. Snowfall, we expect a lake effect snow to get itself going in the western Great Lakes. And as far as northern New England and upstate New York, we're basically looking at anywhere from 2 to 6 inches of snow. But all in all, it's our first big blast of winter here in the east. Savannah?
He's so excited about that, Al. Thank you so much. Now to an NBC News exclusive. Just weeks after American troops were ordered out of Syria, some are actually moving back in. NBC's Courtney Kube is near the Syrian border this morning in Iraq with that story. Courtney, good morning to you.
Hi, Savannah. You know, just 5 years ago, ISIS held about 34,000 square miles of land across Iraq and Syria. Today, they really don't hold any large swaths of land, but there are still thousands of ISIS fighters here in the region, and they're intent on taking that land back.
While many U.S. troops are leaving Syria, a National Guard unit from South Carolina is settling in for a 9-month deployment. Their new home, this remote base in eastern Syria, which NBC News was given exclusive access to. The unit, heavily armed.
The Bradleys are a new addition to our security forces.
U.S. military leaders say the mission here continues to be to defeat ISIS, but the footprint has changed. Many U.S. special operators who were here targeting ISIS have left. Replacing them, infantry troops, including National Guard soldiers with these Bradleys. Their mission now? To help the Syrian Democratic Forces hold this territory.
There are vast oil resources in this region.
We want to bring our soldiers home, but we did leave soldiers because we're keeping the oil. I like oil. We're keeping the oil.
Really the enduring defeat of ISIS mission that we have, the oil fields are contained inside of that.
Since the last ISIS-held territory was taken back in Syria in March, the coalition has killed or captured nearly 700 ISIS fighters in Syria and more than 800 in Iraq. President Trump repeatedly saying the terror group has been wiped out.
I defeated ISIS. You know, I didn't even know to what extent.
But that may not be the case. NBC News gained access to a Kurdish military outpost atop the Makmur Mountains in northern Iraq, where ISIS is far from defeated and may be attempting to rebuild.
They have some tunnels, they have some caves, so you can say that the ISIS are there, they're permanent, they are living there.
Savannah, the number of ISIS fighters in Makmur is not large, maybe a couple hundred. But remember, that's exactly how ISIS and the caliphate once started here. Small groups of fighters taking over small parcels of land, and we're seeing it again now. ISIS determined to survive and to fight again. Savannah?
A lot of people will be watching that closely. Courtney Kube in Iraq for us. Courtney, thank you.
We do have a lot more to get to this morning. AT&T will pay $60 million to settle a complaint that the company misled millions of smartphone customers. The Federal Trade Commission says AT&T charged those customers for unlimited data plans while slowing their data speeds if they use too much. That's a practice known as throttling. AT&T will offer partial refunds to current and former customers as part of that deal. Affected customers will not be required to submit a claim for those refunds.
Well, we're looking at cooler, drier weather today here in the Northeast. That will be changing. Strong storms getting themselves together through the Southwest. Look at this system. That's the one that's going to bring a mixed bag into the Northeast, is bringing snow across the plains. Unfortunately, the warmth continues out west. It's dry, it's warm. This is the start of their rainy season, and it's going to be a while before we see any rain to help ameliorate the wildfire conditions in California.